My name is Kurt Phelps, and I have a wonderful guest on today by the name of Tim Hazzard. Tim and I have known each other for a couple years. Welcome, Tim.
Yeah, thank you, Kurt. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I'm looking at your personal website, Tim, and first off, I love the picture here of your looks like you're singing here on your personal website. I'm assuming, I think you and I spoke before, it's a nice, wonderful picture of you singing at your daughter's wedding.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been playing guitar since I was 15. I'm now 50, so I got a few years under my belt, and really enjoy performing. So when she got married, decided to write her a little song and perform it during the reception. So
wow, that's awesome. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm a few years away from my daughter getting to that point. So I don't know if I'll be able to sing a song, but I'm sure I'll have that point at some day in my life. So I see today you're the vice president of NTT Data, and you've been there since 2016. So I always like to start off to begin with, because everybody has a different, kind of career path. Tell me a little bit about, how it started for you. I see you went to SUNY Buffalo as a computer science, and it looks, you decided on the computer science path. How did your career kind of start, and what were your goals to begin with?
Yeah, so I started playing around with programming back in high school. So I was a bit of a geek and really enjoyed the aspects of writing code and developing applications, creating graphics. So when college time came around, computer science was an obvious choice for me. Started at UB through a series of life things, ended up at South Carolina, still doing computer science. Finished up my degree in South Carolina, got hired up by a company, some strange company out of Dallas called Electronic Data Systems, which eventually transferred me to New Jersey, of all places, to start doing work, writing computer programs. Ultimately, EDS, if you're not familiar with who they are, is just a huge company founded by Ross Perot that eventually got bought by HP, and I think subsequently sold again. So spent 20 years of my career there doing just about everything you could possibly do within the company. Started as a programmer, moved into management, started managing customer accounts, moved into product portfolio, moved into marketing, and just about everything possible that I could do at the company. So it was a phenomenal place. After 20 years, decided to go try my hat at something else, ended up moving off to a manufacturing company, manufacturing IT-related products. So had manufacturing facilities all over the globe. Another fantastic experience, learning just different aspects of business outside of a traditional IT services company. A few years ago, got called by somebody after I had sent out one of my friend requests and one of my follow-ons using the tools here. And they said, hey, just purchased a company, need some help with the integration of it. Do you mind coming over to NTT and helping us out over here? So that's how I ended up over at NTT. That small company that was purchased was Dell Services. NTT had bought them to expand their IT outsourcing reach, and they needed help getting the two companies fully integrated. So that's what I did for the past couple years. Now more on a permanent position within NTT, managing about $100 million portfolio of healthcare accounts.
What is your, what is your opinion on, as you look at your career here, you have been fortunate to be with a company for such a long time, EDS, goodness, you're there for, 18 years. How do you feel the times have changed? That just isn't common anymore, to have the ability to be in a company for 10, 12, 15 years. What are your thoughts about that? What's changing that it doesn't allow an individual to be in a company for 10, 15, 20 years anymore, like you had that opportunity at EDS?
Yeah, I think a lot of dynamics have changed since then. When I went to leave EDS to go try my hat at something else, I reached out to several recruiters, and they basically came to me and said, you're never going to find anything. You've been there 20 years. You're a lifer. So nobody's going to want to touch you because all you know is this one thing. And that was back in the early 2000s that all this happened. I think when you look at, we're in this transitional phase where companies before, it was a family. You stayed there for 30 whatever years and you retired with a nice fat pension. I think, in the 90s that started to change. You started seeing pensions becoming a burden to companies. And then it started to be, if you wanted to get an education and switch companies, that was the only way to do it. You had to switch companies. When I joined EDS, they had an education system where they sent you to school. They had their own education platforms. They sent you to all sorts of training. Those things really don't exist today. A lot of that now is the responsibility of the employee to go find ways to educate themselves and keep themselves competitive. So a lot of things have changed, whether it's a small company or a large company. So it really creates job movement and promotes job movement as a way to increase your skill sets and gain experience.
So was the EDS role, when you left that, was that your personal choice that you decided to leave EDS?
It was. At the time, HP was coming in and just about to buy EDS. There was going to be a series of leadership changes and mergers in order to affect the organization. So I looked at that as an opportunity to go try and do something else.
So what was the process that you took at that time? Hey, I've decided that I want to take a look at opportunities. This is back in 2007. What approach did you take to find your next opportunity? And when you look at it, what do you think well and didn't go well in that 2007 timeframe?
Yeah, so the first thing, obviously, you start looking at your resume and saying, okay, how is this portraying my skill sets, and is it unique, and is it going to stand out? You start going back to what you know, so you look at your LinkedIn contacts and you start to dissect those and say, should I call this person, should I call that person? And ultimately, it becomes overwhelming very quickly. You have a lot of people in LinkedIn that maybe you clicked on because a friend recommended them and you wanted to do your friend a favor, so you expanded their network for them. But really, they're not going to be able to help you find your next position or your next opportunity. So you start to assess it, analyze it. I did several dumps to Excel just to see if I could get better organized around the tool, around the list of people that I had out there. Some of them weren't even active anymore. Some of the email addresses were dead. I couldn't even follow them and track them. So it became a very, very difficult process. So ultimately, at the end, I reached out to 3 or 4 people that I knew, ended up getting connected with a recruiter who helped me find my next opportunity. So it was lucky, but it worked.
Right. Do you, and now when you moved on from your Methode Electronics to the NTT, how was that process different? And that was in 2016 compared to 2007.
Yeah, so when it came time to move on from Methode, I was looking for a better way to manage the process. My tendency is when I have my job, I don't spend a lot of time fostering my contacts. I spend a lot of time focused on doing my day-to-day responsibilities, taking care of that, and taking care of my family. So keeping in touch with my network has always been cumbersome, has always been something, I hate to use the word of a chore, but it was a chore where I had to force myself to do it because it wasn't a priority. So I started looking for a way to manage that better and do a better job at that made it simpler for me. And that's where I came across you, Kurt, and Fellow, and reached out and started to join your organization to get a better handle on this and find a better way to manage it.
So, I mean, how many years do you think you've been in an executive role now?
At least 10 years.
So if we separate out, the candidate from the hiring manager, let's kind of focus a little bit on a hiring manager perspective. For the last 10 years, I mean, first off, what's the largest team you've managed at this point?
Roughly 1,000 people.
So when you look at that, and of course you have the diversity inside of that group and the size of the organizations, what do you think has changed in hiring? What makes it difficult today? What's complicated today when you think about hiring new talent? What is the first thing that comes across your head to finding the best talent, do you think?
Yeah, it's 2 things. One, it's defining the job role and what the expectations are for that role, and then matching those back to a set of skill sets that you need to fulfill that role, and then getting it in the hands of people that understand how to go match those skill sets against thousands and thousands of resumes. You look at the electronic revolution now, it's much simpler to go on a job board site and submit your resume to thousands and thousands of jobs out there. So as a result, as a hiring manager, you could potentially end up with thousands of resumes to dissect and try and find that one person that may stand out in the stack of resumes. Mm-hmm. So I think it's really changed the dynamics. We all rely heavily on recruiters to help filter out those resumes and get us to the right place. And there's a lot of software that will bubble certain ones up to the top based on the skill sets and the requirements. but it's still a complicated task.
So what do you think, kind of if we separate that out, and if you're educating, to candidates thinking about the process, what do you think the value of job boards are today?
I think if you're more in an entry-level position, the job boards are going to let you get your resume out to a lot of different people. And again, if you're at the beginning parts of your career, I think there's a lot of benefits there because you can quickly move around. I think as you move up in the organization and you start looking for more leadership roles, your ability to manage and leverage your network of contacts and network of people is more critical to getting those higher positions. It's much more difficult to get a vice president position,
right,
when you don't know the people that are doing the hiring.
Right. So do you think, so if you look at, internal HR, because obviously you've had to use them, you've had them in your large companies to help you support and staff, what are those strengths and weaknesses today, do you think, of this, it's, 20 years ago, we didn't even have a recruiter internal. Now we have recruiters all over the place in every single company, no matter the size. And, there's strengths and weaknesses with all of them, right? Where do you feel, the value in your hiring has been by utilizing either internal recruiters or external recruiters to help you grow and hire the right people?
Well, I think they're very valuable. We need them because we simply can't go through all the resumes that are going to come in based on a sexy job posting with a decent salary. So we rely heavily on the recruiters, whether they're internal or external. We get the same results of them. It really depends on us as managers, one, to properly define the position and properly define the skill sets that we're looking for, and to a degree, the personalities that we're looking for to leverage and balance our teams. And then from there, we turn it over to the recruiters and we really entrust them to go find the right candidates. When we're looking for more leadership roles, we're really looking for, one, the right set of candidates, but we're also really going to dig deeper into the references and make sure that we understand the management style aligns to the corporate culture that we're looking for.
So it sounds like to me, and which is a great point, if you're looking for a new role, the quality of that relationship with that recruiter, either internal or external, with the hiring manager is really important. And the level of the understanding of the position and the qualification from that hiring manager is super important, because that tells you if that person doesn't, then you coming to that person as a candidate is going to be a struggle, because clearly that person isn't going to truly know how to recognize your strengths to fit that role, because it hasn't been defined well enough between the recruiter and the hiring manager.
Yeah, correct. And the resume is nothing more than a checkbox exercise up until that point where you're finally getting to speak to somebody.
Right. Where do you think hiring is going to go? How do you think the evolution, 20 years ago, it was an unbelievable job board. It just changed everything, right? It allowed us to network with people we couldn't. Then LinkedIn allowed us to connect with people from the past and current and finding new people. Where do you, from a hiring perspective, where do you see you hiring in the future and evolving to in the next 5 years or 10 years, do you think? How are you going to hire, do you think?
Well, I think I'll continue to depend on recruiters, whether internal or external, because we're busy doing our day jobs and really can't read thousands of resumes. On average, I typically get 5 resumes per job that I'm looking at. By the time the recruiter's finished, I get a stack of 5, and then I start working through those 5. So to go through thousands, I think is a challenge. So I think there'll always be a need for recruiters out there to help with this process that can focus on it, that have a wider depth of candidates available to them. I think the job boarders are going to continue to get smarter with artificial intelligence. I think they'll start scanning social media, start doing various things, and eliminate candidates with troubled backgrounds or issues, or maybe they said something political on Facebook that the employer would disagree with. And I think you'll start to see some of those job boards morph into doing more of that analysis in an automated fashion, as opposed to waiting for an interview or waiting for a recruiter to actually go click on Facebook and find something that might be an issue for them. I think they'll also start to look at more behavioral issues and try and scan those social media sites to see, is there a behavioral issue here that maybe this won't be a good fit for our company. So I think you'll start seeing more automation take a role in the whole process.
Do you find, though, in your hiring that especially where you're specifically hiring yourself, right? Not larger teams where you have managers below, but people that directly report to you. Do you find over the past, 10, 15 years that are you getting a higher percentage of people that that you've met through the years and somehow they're coming and working in your group, or are you still a high percentage of people that you've never met before that you're hiring?
Yeah, it's probably 50-50, and part of that is thanks to my network. The minute I have a job opening that I need, I'll reach out to my network and say, hey guys, I have an opening I need to fill. Do you know somebody that's got these skills? So
you think it's increased then over the years? Percentage?
I do. I think more of the network, I think the network's driving more hires than not. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I've always been a big believer that, common sense as the digital world grew, we're all getting connected better. So, common sense is as that digital world grows and we become more connected, more hiring should come from it, simply because, your network's gotten bigger. It's kind of a joke, and you and I have talked about this in the past. Many people have changed jobs with less than 15 people in their network, in the past with just less than 15. The reality of, imagine what's going to happen when you're consistently communicating with 200, Yeah. So it's going to be amazing how that transition happens. I mean, what are your opinions today and thoughts about, when did you first join LinkedIn? When did you first create a profile, do you think?
Oh, geez, I couldn't tell you. I can't remember.
So many, many years ago, probably.
Yeah. It was when it first came out. It wasn't long after it came out. Yeah.
So what do you think, from a career perspective, not business, but career side of things, what do you find has evolved? What are the things that you love about it? And one of the things that you are not a big fan today in that career networking world, or finding a job or finding an advisory or board role when it comes to LinkedIn today?
Yeah, I don't necessarily find it a great tool to go find a job. I think, there's some nice postings out there and other things, but I don't find that as the best way to stay in touch. I use it primarily almost like a Facebook for the business world. I use it to stay in touch with my colleagues. I do enjoy when people post certain industry-related articles that are of benefit to me, so I think there's value there. It does allow me to stay in touch with colleagues that I wouldn't necessarily call them friends, but they're good business colleagues, and it's a way for us to stay in touch with things on a business level. I think LinkedIn has morphed to almost a Facebook status. People are starting to post more personal things than they are business-related things on certain days. So it's kind of gotten cluttered and made it a little more difficult to use, but it certainly is a good tool to keep track of business contacts.
How big is your network today and in your personal side, and how often do you reach out to them today?
So in terms of my total network, I have close to 600 people in LinkedIn. I would break those down and consider roughly 200 of them close. And I broke that down even further to about 100 that I try to communicate with on a regular basis. And when I say regular, every 6 months or so, I'll send them a little newsletter, for lack of a better term. That just lets them know what I'm up to, what I'm doing, what technology I'm dealing with at any given day, just ways to keep in touch.
And how do you, obviously years ago you didn't do that. When did you start implementing that into your life? Was it back in 2016?
It was when I started to take a look at it, and I went to look for another job, and the landscape had changed. So it was, and thanks to Fellow, it was a good way for us to do that. It made it simple, and it forces me to keep up with my network.
So you would say, how often do you reach out to your network now? Do you think that the 200 people, how often are you doing it?
Yeah, so my core group, I try to reach out every 6 months, and then the other group, I do it once a year, almost like a Christmas letter.
And do you feel, shocking or not, a lot of, as I've been fortunate to talk to a lot of executives are a little bit, they're very good at selling their companies, but it's a little timid to do it personally, right? To reach out to that network personal. Was that something you had to overcome, or was that not an issue for you of saying, all right, I got 600 people, I got, 100 to 200 people I've met through the years. I'm going to start reaching out to them personally because I haven't done that before. Was that difficult for you, or was that easy?
Yeah, no, very difficult, very difficult. One, I'm not one to ask for help on personal matters. Business is a whole nother story. I don't mind asking for advice and things for business issues, but if I'm looking for a job, it's very difficult for me to go out and ask people for help. So this whole process forced me to get over that and forced me to look at things in a different light. Communicating to people for me when I don't have a purpose is also a challenge. So this tool definitely forces me to keep up with that and make sure I'm prioritizing it.
So I guess the question, was it that bad? I mean, when you finally did reach out to them, how was the response, and what did people come to you for? And what did you learn about yourself when you kind of made yourself accessible to your network for the first time?
No, it wasn't bad at all. Once you finally put it out there and hit send and get over the anxiety of hitting the send button and is everything right, the response was overwhelming. I never imagined I would get, I think I had over 70% respond in one form or another. Hey, congratulations. Hey, great to hear from you. Hey, you're doing really interesting things. So it was truly amazing, the feedback and the response and who they were, right? People that I thought were very, very close. We had worked together for 5 years, traveled all over the world together, didn't respond. Other people where we had maybe a few interactions, they came back with some of the greatest feedback you would ever imagine. So yeah, it was very interesting, very, very interesting.
So if you were to advise someone at your level today, or even younger in the audience, and they want to kind of open-end question, in today's market today and going into 2019, I'm looking for my next career move. I mean, what would be the top advice that you'd give them right now on that strategy?
Yeah, start early. Don't wait. You got to prioritize staying connected with your people. And that means more than just sending an email periodically. It means understanding what they're doing, keeping up with them, and go above and beyond just the day-to-day work grind that we all deal with, and really focus on understanding what's happening in their lives as well as yours, and make sure you're communicating. Again, they're just as busy as you are. They have business needs, home needs, and other things they're trying to satisfy, and you'd be surprised how willing they are to help, but you got to stay in touch with them and keep up with them. If you hit them blindsided with a request, hey, can you help me find a job, and you haven't talked to them in 5-10 years, that doesn't always go well. So
right. Listen, that's such an unbelievable important advice. As you and I have talked about it for years, that digging the well is really important. And I think that's one of the most important advice that we can give today, especially you get that VP C-suite level. The individuals that wait to look for a job when they need one, it takes how long it takes to find and it's not just finding a job, it's finding a quality one, right? We want to find a quality. I mean, I have to say it, you've been really fortunate, and you said the word lucky a little bit. Luck always helps a little bit, but the reality of there's too many executives out there that are taking jobs and then changing them 15 months down the road, but never really experienced that before in their beginning part of their career. Now they're in the latter part, and I'm telling them, it's because the process that you choose will drive that end result. And if you're not going to stay connected with your network, the quality of your opportunities are going to go down. And I think that's a value over the last couple of years, at least from looking at you and having the opportunity to get to know you, is that you're not taking that for granted anymore.
Yeah, and again, I had to make it a priority. I actually have it on my calendar here that every 2 weeks work on fellow. So it's something I've made sure it's a reminder and it's a priority for me, just because I know my nature is to focus on the latest issues, not necessarily myself. So this keeps me focused. Yeah.
Well, listen, Tim, I want to appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy and you have lots going on. I'm glad your career is going fantastic and things are going great. I appreciate you being a part of the podcast, and I know the audience definitely will learn a lot from this this interview. So thank you for being a part of this. I appreciate it very much. And again, everybody out there, just value and kind of take what Tim said and the importance of managing that your contacts, organizing them, and starting to communicate with them is really important. So thank you, Tim, for that advice. I appreciate that very much. And thank you to my audience. And, we'll look forward to catching up on the next podcast. Everybody have a great day. And Tim, have a great day too.
All right. Thanks, Kurt. You too.